20 worst smokers in Hollywood history. Do you remember when every studio hallway had that little silver ashtray and nobody blinked? The stars we grew up with lit up in makeup chairs, on talk shows, even walking out of hospitals. Some swore a cigarette steadied the hands, others kept an unlit cigar to stall for time. The numbers sound unreal now. 3, 4, even 6 packs a day. Unfiltered menthols on long drives. A voice we loved, sanded down to a rasp, and then the bill came due. This isn't a scolding. It's the part the posters never printed. If fame gave them poise, smoke wrote the small print. Stay close. One legend was buried with a lighter. One name you'd never suspect paid the highest price. And 2 TV favorites hid a habit right in the script. Miss one, and the whole era reads different. Number 20, Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash started young, too young. A cigarette before chores, a pack before a show, and the habit rode with him through every tour bus night and hotel dawn. If you watched him in black, on a small set with rabbit ears, you remember the sound. A voice like oak, warmed and worn. The man had other battles, sure, but the steady smoke never left his shoulder. By the 1980s, the body sent warnings. Operations, hospital stays. That look we all recognize when a friend gets winded crossing a room. Cash never whined. He just kept working, stubborn as fence post wire. Fans like us saw the grit and called it heart. The doctors saw a lifetime of ash settling in places it shouldn't. If his songs made pain feel bearable, his routine made it feel inevitable. He taught us what endurance looks like. He also taught us the tab we don't see when the lights go down. If the cigarette became part of his silhouette, then the bill for that silhouette came stamped and final. From a touring singer's routine, we shift to a comedian whose cigar became part of his timing. Number 19, Groucho Marx. Groucho didn't just smoke cigars, he conducted with them. On stage, that bent little stogie was a metronome. Puff to buy a beat, waggle to set a punchline, a prop that let the mind sprint, while the mouth stalled just long enough for the laugh to land. If you watched him spar with contestants on a 19-inch set, you remember the dance. Eyebrow up, line lands, cigar returns to the grin like it lived there. He didn't always light them. Sometimes the point was posture, cool under hot lights, in control of the room. Off camera, the habit kept pace. Dressing rooms, car rides, late rewrites. The cigar shadowed him from vaudeville to television, never asking for the spotlight. We loved the ease, the shrug, the suggestion that wit had a smoke of its own. But ease is expensive. Years pile up, chests tighten, and the punchlines get shorter. We've seen a joke tool on stage. Now we follow the habit into a moment that scared a man straight, at least for a while. Number 18, Burgess Meredith. Burgess carried cigarettes through decades, the way some men carry a watch. Always there, always ticking. Stage work taught him breath and timing, but the habit rode shotgun to every performance. From cramped dressing rooms to long nights learning pages under a green lamp. He spoke once about the dream that shook him. A building on fire, smoke thick as velvet, the kind that makes doors smaller and seconds louder. He woke rattled, and for a while the pack stayed shut. That's the part folks our age understand. The tug of war between what calms the nerves and what steels them. His voice never needed the smoke. The smoke needed his voice. The work stayed sharp, but the lungs filed the record. One cough, one wheeze, one climb of stairs at a time. Aging didn't soften the cost, it itemized it. From stage nerves to studio chaos, the same routine keeps its grip. Number 17, Moe Howard. Under the wig and the poke in the eyes, there was a real man with a real pack in his pocket. The studio roughhousing looked like make-believe, but the smoke wasn't. Between rehearsals and setups, he'd sneak a few drags, then another, the way crews used to grab coffee. Pipes came and went, cigarettes stayed. Decades at that pace, etched themselves in the chest. You can hear it in old interviews if you listen for the breath between sentences that small hitchmen of our generation learned to hide. Comedy took timing. Smoking took everything between the beats. By the later years, hospital corridors replaced sound stages, and the body cashed checks the bit never wrote. Fans remember the eye pokes. Doctors remember the scans. Take away the punchlines and listen. Silence keeps better records than applause. Number 16. Buster Keaton. The stone face hid a lot, including the smoke. He learned pain the old way. Falls on wood floors, ribs against railings, the camera closer than mercy. Between setups, he reached for a cigarette like it was part of the costume. Quiet men often do. The cough showed up first. Then the shortness after a flight of stairs, the pause he tried to pass off as thinking. By the 60s, hospitals knew his name better than theaters did. The cruelest detail? He wasn't even told how bad it was. So he kept working, and he kept lighting, the way you keep a habit when it has lived beside your talent long enough to feel like a partner. We watched the grace. The breath told the truth. In the end, the man who never flinched for a gag met something that didn't blink either. We leave cigarettes between stunts and step into a life where the pipe felt gentler and wasn't. Number 15. Bing Crosby. For some of us, Sunday meant a voice on the radio that sounded like a warm room. Behind that ease was a pipe almost always within reach. It became part of the picture. Golf bag, cardigan, pipe stem resting on a knuckle, while the next story lined up. Pipes felt gentler than cigarettes in those days. They weren't. Hours of smoke still find the same doors inside the chest. Friends noticed the clearing of the throat before a note. Family noticed the way the breath shortened on hills that never used to matter. He adjusted like men of that era did, quietly, stubbornly, with a joke and a nod. The public saw poise. The charts don't blink. Years of habit sat in fine print across every scan. From home comfort, we move under bright lights, where polish made the ritual look like style. Number 14. Frank Sinatra. Cool came with a glass in one hand and a cigarette in the other. You remember the look. Tie loosened just enough, a curl of smoke trailing the note. On stage it read as ease, off stage it read the same, only longer and later. Hotels, back seats, dressing rooms, ashtrays were as common as microphones. He swore the ritual steadied the nerves before a high note, then kept it afterward when the room wouldn't settle. Friends told him to cut back. Friends in that world always did. The voice aged into gravel we called character, but the chest paid for that texture 1 inch at a time, and when the final arrangements were made, the image followed him right to the end, like a signature you can spot across a crowded page. Style travels, so does the bill. Glamour showed the pose. Now we look at lounge room ease that turned into hours you can't buy back. Number 13. Dean Martin. He made late nights look easy. The tucks, the grin, the song that slid across the room like a fresh deck. Behind it, a steady ribbon of smoke. He started young and never really stopped. Studio breaks, casino lounges, quiet drives after the crowd went home. The habit rode shotgun, unfiltered and unquestioned. You can hear it on old records if you listen for the grain that wasn't always there, the breath that arrives a half step late. Friends called it charm. Doctors called it something else. In the last act, scans began telling truths the magazines never printed, and the body asked for a kind of rest the calendar couldn't give. He kept working anyway, because that's what men of that era did. Shoulder the tune, light the cigarette, pretend the price isn't rising. We close the casino and head to television, where the laugh track covered the same old smoke. Number 12. Jackie Gleason. The laugh was a freight train, the timing a drumbeat, and the smoke never took a night off. Between takes on cramped New York stages and later in bright Miami studios, he burned through packs like they were part of the costume. You remember the image? Cufflinks flashing, a quick drag to top off a punchline, then that rolling chuckle that filled a room. The bigger the show got, the smaller the breaks became, and cigarettes rushed in to fill the space. Years at that pace etched themselves into the chest. The breath shortens. Stairs get steeper. Doctors start using words that sit heavy in the mouth. He kept the showman's posture, but the chest kept score. At some point, the ritual stops being a ritual and becomes the room you live in. Big laughs are done. We go to clipped lines and long work days, ashtray unchanged. Number 11, Jack Webb. The badge looked steady. The breath behind it didn't. Long before syndication made him a fixture in our living rooms, he was a kid with asthma who lit cigarettes anyway. Habits don't ask permission. They just move in. On set, he pushed through takes with a pocket full of packs, the kind of routine that turns coffee rings into burn marks on a desk. The voice we remember, flat, clipped, no wasted syllables, carried a rasp that deepened as the years did. Crew members learned his rhythm: light, deliver, stub, repeat. Audiences saw command. The stethoscope doesn't negotiate. The clock was running fast. The workload never eased. The nights never got shorter, and the ashtrays kept their appointments. By the end, the man who made procedure look clean was living with a body that had run out of clean exits. Procedure ends at the desk. A clean family image begins on set. Habit in tow. Number 10, Michael Landon. The family man on screen carried a different routine off it. Between setups on dusty backlots and long drives home, cigarettes piled up like ticket stubs, one after another, often unfiltered, often without a second thought. Colleagues remember the smell clinging to wardrobe, the way a scene reset became an excuse to light again. He wasn't loud about it. He was steady. That's how habits work when they've been around long enough to feel like furniture. Watch the interviews from the later years, and you can spot the tells our generation knows too well. A cleared throat before the first answer, a deeper rasp by the last question, the breath that needs a moment before it catches up. He shouldered it the way he shouldered work. Head down, schedule first, no complaint. The myth was frontier tough. The breath kept the quieter record. After the smile and the reset, we pause for one man who finally said the quiet part on camera. Number 9, William Talman. You remember the face, even if the name takes a second. The prosecutor who never quite beat Perry Mason. Off camera, the habit was relentless. Cigarettes bookended scenes, filled the pauses between setups, turned car rides into little rolling smoke rooms. When the diagnosis came, he didn't retreat to privacy and legend like so many did. He stepped in front of a camera one more time and spoke as plain as a man can. This is what the stuff does, and I won't be here when you see this. For those of us who watched that era in real time, it felt like someone finally breaking the hush in the room. The posture of cool softened. What remained was a father, a working actor, a man out of breath, telling the truth the posters never printed. It wasn't performance, it was a reckoning. The warning is on tape. The schedule keeps rolling. Watch what that pace does. Number 8, David Janssen. He lived at a sprint, long hours, early calls, scenes that stacked like dominoes. In between, the ashtray stayed close. Crews remember the rhythm, finish a take, reach for a cigarette, pace while the next setup crawled into place. That kind of schedule chews up sleep and turns nicotine into a metronome. The voice roughened, the shoulders tightened, and the breath that once carried chases and courtroom speeches started to arrive late. He pushed anyway. That was the job, and that was the era. Those of us who watched him week to week could feel the strain under the polish, like a drumhead tuned too tight. When the breaking point came, it came fast, the way it often does with men who don't believe in easing up. The work left a mark on a generation. The habit left a mark on him. From sprinting days, we slide into a club set where the bit hid the danger. Number 7, Red Foxx. He joked about heart attacks for years, dropping to the floor on cue while an audience roared. The punchline stuck so hard that people thought he was doing the bit when the real one hit. Behind the comedy was a life that ran hot, long nights, financial headaches that never quite went away, and a cigarette that lived between two fingers like it paid rent. On stage, the smoke fit the patter. One drag before a setup, another before the hammer. Off stage, it followed him to rehearsals, into cars, through tough phone calls with agents and accountants. Friends worried. Friends always do. But a man used to getting laughs learns to brush off concern with the next line. In the end, the body didn't listen to the act. The timing he mastered all his life betrayed him in one hard, quiet moment. The crowd in chairs goes home. The country on couches tunes in. The ritual stays. Number 6. Johnny Carson. The late-night desk always had company. A mug, a stack of blue cards, and an ashtray that never seemed empty. In the early years, smoke curled on camera like it had a cue of its own. Later, when television started frowning on the habit, the ritual shifted just out of frame, but it didn't stop. Writers remember the rhythm. Monologue, interview, commercial break, a quick drag. Back on the air as if the breath never changed. The truth is, it did. You could hear it in certain laughs, the kind that finish with a small catch, and in the way he pressed a hand to the desk before leaning in for the next question. He wasn't oblivious. He joked about trying to quit, the way a man jokes when the thing has him by the lapels. Years of cool turned into a ledger only doctors read aloud. He made millions feel at ease. The habit made him pay for the calm. We leave the desk lamp and follow the follow spot, where the calendar gets sharper and the throat pays. Number 5, Sammy Davis Jr. For a man who lived on sound, tap rhythms, trumpet breaks, that whip-crack timing, he gave far too much air to smoke. The schedule alone would have undone most. 2 shows a night, flights before dawn, studio call at noon, rehearsals when everyone else went to dinner. In that grind, cigarettes become punctuation, one before the cue, one after the bow, one to settle the nerves, while the dressing room door is still swinging shut. He was loyal to the ritual, even when the throat started hinting at trouble, even when food lost its taste, and notes landed a half-step rougher than memory said they should. Choices got harder. He wanted the voice that made a room stand up, and he wanted the years to keep using it. That's the trap our era knew too well. The very thing that steadied the hand on stage tilted the odds off it. He took the hits in private and kept the smile public. The work was dazzling. The cost was not. After chasing notes, we look at a body trained for perfection that kept an old routine anyway. Number 4, Patrick Swayze. He moved like music, shoulders loose, feet sure, and for a long time the smoke moved with him. Long shoots, late rehearsals, days that began in a dance studio and ended under hot lights. A cigarette bridged every gap. He'd talk about discipline, like other men talk about luck, and then reward the discipline with another drag on the drive home. For those of us who watched the run of hits, it felt like watching momentum become destiny. But momentum doesn't bargain. The throat rasped, the breath shortened. The mirror started telling truths charm couldn't edit. Even when the doctors gave warnings in the plainest language they had, the old ritual kept knocking. One more for the nerves, one more for the road, one more, because this is the hour I always do. He still showed up for work, still gave the set the grace it paid for. The rest of the story played out away from the cameras, where habits and hope argue in whispers. Modern momentum gives way to old studio image. The same habit under a different suit. Number 3, Clark Gable. He wore authority like a well-cut suit, and the cigarette fit the image so perfectly that audiences barely noticed how often it was there, off-screen. It wasn't a pose, it was pace. Early call, quick drag. Studio meeting, quick drag. Long night shoot that ran into dawn. Ashtray after ashtray. Like mile markers you don't bother to count. Friends remembered the cough before the laugh, the way he'd angle a shoulder to hide a breath that needed catching. In that era, men didn't talk about strain. They tucked it under a joke and moved on. He worked through warning signs, the way he worked through retakes. Steady, proud, impatient, with anything that slowed the day. The posters promised invincibility. The body kept its own calendar, and it wasn't impressed by star billing. When the reckoning came, it came with the blunt finality our generation recognizes. No spotlight, no theme music, just a room, a doctor, and the truth. The marquee name steps aside. The craftsman, with a short, perfect run, takes the frame. Number 2, John Cazale. 5 films, 5 home runs, and a cigarette in nearly every between time. He was the quiet center of rooms, packed with giants. The kind of actor who made everyone else better just by listening, and the habit threaded through it all. Between setups, he'd drift to a corner, draw once or twice, stare at the floor like he was memorizing it, The rolls were tight coils of tension. The smoke looked like a release valve. Friends talked about how fast he burned through packs when the days ran long, how the air around him carried that tired, sweet smell you can spot in old rehearsal halls. He wasn't a swaggerer. He had the working man's relationship with a cigarette. Practical, constant, unquestioned. The brilliance stayed. The body paid. For audiences our age, his run felt like a promise that this kind of focused craft could last. And then the promise ended early, as quietly as he played. 5 immaculate chapters, close. Now we face the silhouette that taught a whole era what cool looked like. Number 1, Humphrey Bogart. The cigarette wasn't a prop for him. It was punctuation. Tilt of the match, curl of smoke, a line that landed like gravel and grace at the same time. We met him in shadows. Fedoras, lamplight, a glass sweating on the table, and the ember told us exactly who was in charge. The voice that came with it had the weight of a city street at midnight. On screen, the ritual looked effortless. Off screen, it was relentless. Ashtrays on scripts, breaks that weren't breaks at all. A pack that ended before the last scene did. An entire generation learned from that silhouette that cool had a glow at the end of it. We copied the look long before we understood the cost. Age doesn't bargain with style. The rasp deepened beyond character. The appetite for air shrank, and the rooms he once owned grew longer between the door and the chair. Doctors could list the anatomy. Fans like us only felt the loss. The way a familiar voice thins out until it sounds like memory speaking through a hallway. In the end, the image he gave Hollywood turned on him with the same clarity it once gave his scenes. Smoke adds edge, and then it erases it. He made the screen look dangerous and noble at once. The Habit made the final edit without asking. We watched this era together. Through rabbit ear antennas, movie pages folded in a wallet, and Saturday nights that smelled a little like hairspray and ash. The posters sold confidence. The rooms they came from told a quieter story. Some men beat the habit for a while. Some didn't. All of them taught us something about how image and routine can trade places without asking. If these names stirred a memory, or surprised you, tell me which moment hit hardest. Who did we miss? Which story should we open next time? If this brought one new detail to light, tap like, so it finds the folks who sat beside us on those long, smoky nights. Same time tomorrow. We've got more true Hollywood to unbox.